That time again. We're back with the Noon Whistle. I'm John Anzalone.
And I'm Chris Trottier, and we have two fellow colleagues and leaders in the state of Wisconsin, Jim Michlig from Muskego and Dustin Lehman from Mukwonago. Welcome to the Noon Whistle, gentlemen.
Hey, thanks for having us, guys. Super excited. I'm not going to lie. It took me a little bit to hold a straight face when you guys both just jumped in front of the screen.
Super. Jim, we're super athletic.
I saw that. At least
that's Photoshop, so it looks a lot higher than it really was.
That's right. All right. So let's get right into it. You two are leaders in Southeast Wisconsin, and I asked you guys to be on here because February is Career and Technical Education Month, and at the Noon Whistle, we want to celebrate that, which all of us believe that is one of the pillars of a strong Wisconsin economy. So let's jump right into it. I'm going to also encourage people on their social media posts to ask questions via their comment, because Jim and Dustin always have an answer. At least they just like to talk. All right.
And it's a good one.
So whoever wants to take the lead on this. So talk a little bit. I think there's a misnomer out there. I was just posed a question today that said, are the trades getting back into the schools? We hear that all the time. Why don't you guys talk a little bit about how K-12 education is really kind of taking a lead in workforce and career development in the state of Wisconsin?
I'll jump in and take that right away. And I guess Chris and John and Dustin, we've been in this game long enough. The reason we get those questions is because of what happened back in the recession of the educational system and the trades classes, right? There was a period of time, I call it a little bit of the dark days, when Dustin was leaving college. And unfortunately, the jobs were being gutted out of K-12, right? Those jobs were going to go overseas. They were leaving Wisconsin. They were not going to have a place for our future economy. Fast forward into 2024 and where we're at today, it's come full circle. Manufacturing drives the bus in the state of Wisconsin. It employs the most people from the top down, whether that is physically in the trades or in accounting and CEOs and business and marketing. And then from the manufacturing bubbles, stems into the healthcare industry, stems into the building trades, which then continues, like you said, Chris, to drive our economy. So are they bringing trades back into the schools? There are schools that were like Muskego in 2001, did a lot of gutting to their programs and really reduced this down to minimal offerings. And now fast forward, our community has spoken, our state has spoken, our region has spoken, and we are very fortunate that we just passed a $28 million referendum focused on CTE and the trade specifically. So we're growing. And Dustin went through that process 6 years ago, Dustin?
Yeah, so Mukwonago went through that in 2017, where the community, they voiced their concern. We need to, Mukwonago is very proud in the tradition of having the trades and never really getting rid of that. However, they knew it needed an uplift. It needed to be revitalized, and the community spoke. They provided a large referendum with a huge focus on career technical education. And because of that, the enrollment in our programs, they've grown by over 250% in the CT spaces in Mukwonago. And you're seeing that all around Southeast Wisconsin. The communities are speaking up and they're saying, we want this in our schools. And there's a lot of great things happening in Southeast Wisconsin right now.
Was that a heavy lift when all that took a turn? Was that a heavy lift from the school side?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So like when you talk about the turn, John, I'm assuming the current referendum that I'm working through right now to bring the stuff back and really full-fledged. Yeah, it's a heavy lift. A lot of conversations with Chris and Dustin around this as I've been doing the work. One of my biggest things that I've been focusing on, and we use candid terminology, I never wanted to put lipstick on a pig. So as we have these new spaces, we connect with our business communities. And right, it's 2024. We have a computer in our pocket. So I didn't want to develop our dad's wood shop. Like, how do we start to push the envelope to prepare students for any industry, any hands-on future careers that are there? So we've really been focusing, how do we redevelop our curriculum in CTE to meet multiple industry needs to better prepare our students for the future? Yep. So with that, not only came equipment and trying to find more money for bigger, better equipment when we didn't have it in the budget, but also came a lot of curriculum writing and developing and planning and working with staff to help really provide a paradigm shift to how they're currently doing stuff. And my staff is doing amazing things, and we're going to take them from really good to great. And it's going to look differently for sure. And it has been a heavy lift.
And I think when you look at, one of the reasons I can speak to like why I think the three school districts on here, have conversations is because all of us can speak to that same journey, right? We can all speak to that remodel, that career pathway development, using strategic partnerships to engage our employees to get work-based learning experiences, YAs, industry recognized certifications. And that kind of leads to, some of the viewers may think Dustin misspelled something on the back of his wall, but it really does stand for Muck CTE. It's not like Muck T. So talk a little bit about the CTE portion, Dustin, because that's your space. Both of you are former CTE, which stands for Career and Technical Education teachers. Career and Technical Education. You guys are both CTE teachers. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing nationally. I mean, I know you guys have spoken nationally. You've been spoken regionally. Talk a little bit about with some trends, kind of piggybacking off what Jim just said, in career and technical education. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I would say we're, in Jim especially, we're all about branding and trying to educate what career and technical education is. I think in the background, everyone kind of thinks like, oh, it's the trades. And absolutely, it is the trades, and we do that really well. However, it is the healthcare workers. It's our future business and marketing, our hospitality, all of those different careers kind of all built in. And when we look at the national level, when Jim and I go to some of these conferences and we speak at some of these conferences, we're always pleasantly surprised at how well Wisconsin is doing CTE. We have some very high functioning school districts across the state doing some really great things. So I think CTE within the K-12 school system has never been stronger, and there's never been more opportunity for us to really grow our programs. The alternative funding that's been available through our certifications, through our different grants, it is there. You just have to get it. You have to go for it. It takes a lot of work, but it's necessary to get our kids ready for what is about to hit them when they graduate from all of our high schools. So I would say we're in a good spot, but there's a lot of work to do, but there's a ton of opportunity if you go for it.
And I'm gonna put my my friend John here on the spot because he's older than the three of us, not by much.
Not together.
Right, but he's young and spry. I think, John, you can really speak to what Dustin and Jim are talking about, knowing that you're twins and how, you have a son who's in the trades. And you want to talk a little bit about how CTE, your wife's a former retired business teacher, shout out to Lisa, and an avid teacher. You want to talk a little bit about how it impacted your kids? Yeah,
and it was almost accidentally. He decided late in the game, like, hey, I think I want to do this, youth apprenticeship. And he went in and thought, I think I want to be an electrician, and ended up coming out saying I want to be a plumber, and went right into the job market, is making good money. It was a game changer for him, and it was something that he didn't participate in until, like I said, late in the game, his senior year. But eye-opening for us as well as him. And to be able to say, I did the electrical thing, I thought it's what I wanted to do, I didn't want to do that, and then slide into another trade was a game changer. And like I said, came out of high school making good money, and he's still going to school. Obviously he's in his apprenticeship and working towards a journeyman, and he's going to have a good career out of it. So like what you guys do is so important. And I guess it brings a question of, do you think kids are aware? Like, are you getting to the point where kids are aware of, like, this is something I need to step into or give it a try?
Dustin, you don't mind, I'm going to kind of jump on there. John, before I answer your question, the one thing that always amazes me as you talk about your son is the electricians can never see them doing the plumber's work, and the plumbers can never see the electricians do the work.
Right.
And they're both tactile, hands-on learners, but it's always funny. You get on the job sites and you hear the zingers going from the plumbers. It always amazes me. And to people who don't know, to now kind of feed your question, they all think they do the same thing, but they really don't. So about the kids and are they aware? I would say awareness is growing. The demands are changing from what I'm seeing from our students' educational journey. Students want to know how they can get those exposures and those experiences to help either reaffirm what they want to do or help them understand maybe this isn't what I want to do. I'm seeing a lot more demands for students to really look at their electives and their congruent instruction pieces towards work-based learning and saying, okay, what industry credential may I be able to get that better aligns with my future career? I'm a graphic designer. If I take graphic design 2, I can get my Adobe certification at 17 years old, which will then fast forward and better prepare me in positions for my future career. So I'm starting to see a shift into, I guess I call it the savvy consumer of K-12 education. So how do I leverage these programs, these opportunities to better align or help inform me that I want to be the plumber or I want to be the electrician or I don't want to do this at all. I'm going into construction management.
Yeah. So taking a step back, have employers, is it educating employers as well, or were they waiting with open arms like send them to us?
Dustin, I can jump in, or do you want to take this one?
You can start up.
Okay. So employers need education about the opportunities are there. Like Dustin said, we are definitely leading the way in a lot of ways nationwide. We are very fortunate that the Department of Workforce Development is writing for the Workforce Innovation Grant, which is then producing youth apprenticeships, which gives students under the age of 18 to do jobs that they normally have to be 18 years of age. We have to educate employers that they don't have to be 18. They can work for you. Some of our employers are on board right away, and then they run into a hiccup with their insurance provider says no. So the arms are not wide open, but they're open, and they want to know, tell me, how is company X doing it? I need to get in because I need my workforce tomorrow. And I think as we start to work together, we collaborate. Chris is sending the message out in Walworth. Dustin's hitting the message hard in Mukwonago. I'm hitting the message in Muskego. And as more people are seeing the things we're doing and the students coming out there, the opportunities are continuing to grow. And now the employers' arms are open.
And I have to acknowledge Mr. John Henderson gave us a comment. Great to see our collaboration. He's a loyal viewer of the Noon Whistle, which is the #1 podcast in Walworth County, and he's also a fellow Rotarian. I did want to say to Dustin, talk a little bit about, I'm going to springboard off of John's conversation about collaboration. Talk a little bit about how, I know it started with the two of you and we jumped on board, and you're seeing this collaboration across our area. Talk a little bit about the jobs board and how that allows and helps our business partner with our schools a little bit.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that Muskego and Mukwonago compete in every facet. Mukwonago usually comes out on top of that.
That is fair.
Minus the job boards. He jumped
after the 3 p.m. time, right? But what Jim and I, we all go to all these meetings together all of the time, and we're doing the same work. We're always trying to do this. What's best for our students? And then Jim and I kind of pose a question, like, we're trying to do what's best for our students, but what's best for our community and what's best for our industry leaders? And is it best for my manufacturing companies here to kind of hold them tight, close, and don't talk about them because I want all of my students to fill those jobs and not let any kids from Muskego fill those jobs? Back in the day, that used to be okay because we were scratching and clawing for those positions for our students. Now, no matter what we do, we cannot fill all of the vacancies. I need those kids from Muskego. I need those kids from surrounding districts to help our manufacturers or our business leaders fill all of their vacancies. So Jim and I really tried to figure out what can we do to really make this as streamlined as possible, because there's turnover in education. Well, there's turnover in industry, right? Once you have that connection, it's great to keep working back and forth. But what happens when that person gets promoted or maybe moves to a different company? Now you have to start that process all over again. The job board really was kind of created to quit that conversation starting over and over and over again, or them reaching out to the school and trying to figure out, is it a counselor? Is it an administrator? Is it a secretary? Who is that person to kind of connect the dots?
Yeah.
The job board is that one consistent.
Yeah, I would agree. And we, it was funny because when I ran into you guys at a conference, we were trying to figure out the same thing. And I'm like, well, this is a pretty good idea. Like, duh, why reinvent the wheel? And now, we have the Walworth County Economic Development Alliance on board, Gateway Technical College, and we're seeing it just blow up. And this is the best way if you're trying to figure out how to get connected to schools. Post your entry-level vacancies on the jobs board. It's free of charge. Do that ASAP, and then you're going to have a whole pool of candidates. So one last question before we close, because as we know, we could talk for hours. We're passionate about the work. This is the longest John Anzalon's been quiet, so he's struggling with it.
I am.
But hey, listen, John, just cheer us on, buddy.
This is really growth. This is growth for me, and you guys are a wealth of information. I like listening to what you do, your leaders, and what you do, and it's fun to listen to. So thank you guys.
Real quick, I just want one last question here. You guys presented at the Wisconsin area, the Wisconsin School Board Association conference. What are some, when you guys present, and what are some common questions? Just in 1 minute, give me some common questions you get from superintendents, other district leaders, school board members that you see that other districts are wrestling with that, some of us, like the three of our school districts, Delavan, are nailing. Talk a little bit about those questions.
I'm going to jump in here because you hit Dustin on Muck CTE, and just want to point out they had to go Muck because he can barely pronounce Mukwonago because it's so hard for him. But
hey, Dustin, where do Jim's kids go to school? Real quick, I just Mukwonago. All right, okay, I wasn't sure. Go ahead, my fault.
So one thing I always tell people, and me and Dustin talk about often, and we definitely saw this at WAS, was the stuff that we're doing, 90% of it's not like it was revolutionary, something new, right? We do career fairs. They've existed forever. What we found was happening is things happened on silos in your school systems or your business partners, and people didn't know how to connect the dots. And if you had that teacher that year, you may have gotten an experience, and it wasn't streamlined for all parties within a system. So sorry for the bell there. So what we've noticed is that one thing I think Elkhorn, Mukwonago, and Muskego do very well is the branding and the messaging. How do you brand and message the opportunities and the programs that you have so your students, your parents, your community members, and your business partners know where to go to at least start the conversation to provide the opportunity? So when I was listening at WAS, when I was talking to school board members, like, I think we have something that does that. I'm just not sure about it. And if a school board member thinks you may have it but doesn't know, 90% of your community is going to be in that same boat. So how do you brand the great things you're doing? How do you package it so that it can touch all parties that you're doing it? Dustin, what were you seeing when we were there?
Yeah, and the biggest thing too is people look at it like it's such a daunting task. Like this is so much work. I don't know. We barely have the resources to run the programs. How are we going to be able to do all of this? And they don't realize the alternative funding that is out there, to the point where Jim and I often say, how can you afford not to provide these opportunities for your students?
Yeah.
So I think that's a big thing too, really just the exposure, that not all school districts understand the idea that they can bring in lots of alternative funding through grants, through certifications, and all while you're doing that, it is what is best for our students and our future workforce.
Yep. Well, I think we're going to we'll end there, and I think I'm going to touch base on that. What our communities don't understand, to just piggyback off of what you're saying, is Act 59 gave us the CT incentive grant, and for every kid that gets an industry recognized credential, youth apprenticeship, or a technical diploma, we get a maximum for each kid up to possibly $1,000. So districts that are hitting the home run are able to self-sustain these programs and reinvest back into them. So, John, you want to take us home? I mean, you've been kind of quiet. I wanted to make sure you're awake. So how do we want to close here, Johnny? What do you think, buddy?
John, before you close, can I do one shameless plug here?
Absolutely.
All right. So I just want to let everyone know, like, continue these conversations. And Chris, you were there last year. Chris and John may be presenting. I just haven't told them yet. I want to continue these conversations in June 17th and 18th, sponsored by the WMC, Wisconsin Manufacturing Chamber of Commerce, is Wisconsin's Level Up Convention, how to attract and build Wisconsin's top talent and workforce. So join us. We are going to continue these conversations with some of the top leaders in the state of Wisconsin to educate on how to not only tap on those funds that Chris just talked about, but then also how to show best practices for the business community. So join us in June if you want to continue these conversations.
Yep. And it's in Plover, Wisconsin, correct?
Over Wisconsin. Yep.
All right. Perfect. All right,
Perfect.
thanks, guys. John, take us home. Here we go.
Hey,
We got
let's
about
bring
30
us home. We're going to go around the horn here and give two qualities you like to see in a employee. And I'll kick it off. I mean, the first one for me is you got to have a haircut like Jim and I. No, I would throw out reliability and good character. Go ahead,
All right.
Jim.
Jim, you go.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Dustin talked a little bit about the lift that these programs take and how you can afford it. So good quality I always look for is the grind. Someone who's willing to show up every day to get the job done. And then also someone who's innovative, that's looking for new ways to solve the problems and doesn't just give up and say, this is how we've always done it. So the grind and innovation are the two things I'm
Dustin.
looking for.
Yeah, and when we look at all of our evaluations that we get back from our students, I say the biggest thing is someone who is going to show up on time, but that person who's willing to take that initiative, that problem solver, like what Jim was saying. Those are the two biggest qualities that our employees are looking for.
Yep, and we use an employability skills curriculum called Bring Your A Game, and in those A's, I was just going to say the same thing, Dustin. Attendance and ambition; those would be the two. Well, gentlemen, thanks for being on. I know you guys have been in my ear for 6 months to join the Noon Whistle, the ElkWorks Noon Whistle. For the record, here's the good news: you guys were the longest one in history. So
that doesn't surprise me with Jim being involved.
No, but it was also great.
Yeah.
You know, if people are looking, schools around the state of Wisconsin or employers, we do this to communicate and tell a story. You guys got a great story. Your story, our story is very similar to what we value, what our vision is, where we believe the future of our workforce should come from, and how we partner up with our district. So I appreciate you guys being on. Thank you for being there. John, anything else before we go back to work and blow the whistle?
Oh, before the Noon Whistle is the bell at Muskego.
All right, well,
it's time to go, but thanks for all your hard work.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it for having us on.